Okay. Thank you so much for attending, for being here today. We'll go ahead and get started with our committee of the whole meeting for August 16th at 5:32. First on our agenda is good of the order. Does anyone have good of the order items to address?
Let's see. Yes, I did. I forgot what it is. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, I'll
rush.
think about it later. I'm sure.
Could we circle back and have
Yes.
good of the order at the end?
Yes, let's do that.
My memory's very important.
Okay, so we will move on to regular review of the regular meeting agenda. Looking over our regular meeting, I'd like to know there's 7 items on the consent agenda. Are there any council members that want to pull any of these items off to discuss, or are you okay with the current consent agenda? Councilmember Naplin.
Yeah, I just wanted to report that I had a question and it was answered related to one of the items. And so I don't know if now would be an appropriate time to share. I don't have any problem with it being on the consent agenda, but I felt like I wanted to share what.
Yeah.
Okay, please. So one of my questions had to do with 3rd Avenue and the contract related to that, the design contract, of when there would be council updates and you know, the timing of when that would happen. And Steve responded that he expected one to be at the 30%, and then the community outreach event being at the 60%. And then I think another council presentation by the consultant at 90%. Am I representing that correctly, Steve? Dr. Lanchewski?
You have it. Yep.
Okay, so that's all. I just wanted to know, you know, what to expect with that. So.
Thank you, Councilmember Naplin. Anyone else? So you're not wanting to?
No, I just wanted to establish, you know, the expected timeline of when the full council would receive the update from the consultant, because that is in the contract, that there would be 2 council updates and then a community outreach event at some point.
Thank you. So next, the next items on the agenda are just the mayor's report, report from the fire district and police and committees. The unfinished business, we have a resolution adopting employee recruitment policy. We have, are there any questions, I guess, on this agenda item or comments? No, the employee recruitment policy. I don't know if you wanted to.
I do have some questions on that. Is now when you want to discuss it, or do we discuss it when it's an item on the regular?
When it's an item on the regular agenda.
Yeah.
We will be discussing the ordinance adopting revised salary schedule and for non-represented employees. And we have 2 new items: interlocal agreement with King County City Climate Collaboration and ordinance adopting revised term of policy for Mayor Pro Tem. If there are no other comments or questions, we'll go on to our next agenda item, which is parks discussion with Director Lanchewski.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Steve Lanchewski, Public Works. We'll tag Laura in on a little bit of this as well. And I think I got a little bit of the flavor of the topic after speaking at our committee meeting last week with Rick. I'll share my screen. Make sure I'm not. Just click that one. Okie dokie. All right. Everybody can see that loaded up?
Yep.
All right. So, with that said, a little bit of parks discussion and then questions at the end on anything in general. But so it was my understanding maybe to talk about as the precipice of this discussion, like the park and phase 2 coming online, are there other things we want to consider, and or seems we've had some motivations to create additional enhancements, maybe coincident with this upgrade at phase 2, and making some other kind of, I don't know, maybe decisions or guidance around this property versus like the parks planning in general. Is that correct?
Steve, you asking me?
I'm asking the group, yes.
Oh, the group, okay. Okay, well, I'll speak up. Yeah, that is my understanding what you said. In addition, we talked about the potential for additional acquisitions around this area to actually impact what our, what the proposed plan might be.
Okay. That's kind of what Laura and I were, I mean, I know you and I talked, Rick. I just want to give others a chance too, to make sure they had their say. But Laura and I were chatting, as long as we're talking about Big Rock, I think specific and not just acquiring other pieces, that's totally fine. But just because the parks plan is quite out of date, so I know we are proposing to rework that over the next comprehensive planning period here, the next 2-year budget. So that's a different story. But yeah, going around the Big Rock element, we have, the very preliminary design for the expansion of phase 2. We have a softer approach, which was kind of this. You can see the bottom right quadrant of the park is more green space and integrated area. If we are to leave the wetland on site, should we be able to, proceed with other enhancements and more fields, we have park option B. So I just wanted to kind of bring to the screen here a little more space around the properties. So where the word Duvall is, that's obviously our current property that is developed. And then the property to the south is phase 2 we just purchased. So I have, just so you guys know, I've done a little homework. I've spoken to our on-call surveyor, and I've spoken to legal in talking about acquisitions in specific. There isn't really anything currently needed to have in a closed session. A little different process when we get into specifics, but just talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-ish properties around us, that's fairly loose, nothing direct. I think continuity or continuous property lines are probably important. I think we could all agree on that, like having something that's contiguous with the parcels we own. If we are to expand around, I think some of the options we may have that we can look into are not necessarily only outright purchases, but maybe purchases and land acquisition through boundary line adjustments. And if you're not familiar with the boundary line adjustment, let's just use this piece here that you can see has some flat lands, obviously the sensitive areas in the back. These are RA5, so they're county rural, 1 unit per 5 acres. So for quick math, let's say this parcel is 9 acres and they're willing to sell off maybe some of the encumbered space behind, but yet not make a non-conforming lot, so keeping their current property at 5. Let's say we were able to buy 4 acres off the back. You literally, it's kind of like a rubber band, you just do the paperwork and you adjust the property line so it sits at that new 4-acre mark. That way we haven't made a new parcel, we aren't creating a parcel through the short plat process, we're just amending the property lines that we that may be able to work in a fashion in successive order where, let's say, we own this piece, which is currently in the county, which is important because this piece is currently in the city. So county, we do a BLA, and then we could do another BLA, and then eventually take it into the city. But so there are some opportunities for that type of acquisition. There's many things. Some of you have been around when the piece we purchased came in for an annexation application with a little trade-off. So there are other tools that maybe somebody's not interested in selling all but part, and maybe kind of the catch is some sort of development trade. There's always something on the table. That's obviously in very late stages in negotiations of whatnot, but there's plenty of things to do. It would be like the BLA would be through the county process. It would not be city run. I know Laura and I have done BLAs. They don't take us very long. I can assure you a BLA in the county will take time. For example, the Tote water main has been clear and grid review at the county for 6 months. So yeah, I don't think a BLA would take as long as a short plat, from talking to our surveyor who has done some BLAs in King County. But certainly not a straight up process, just like purchasing a piece of land. So I think that's still something to consider. There we go, options for purchasing, working with owners on BLAs, you know, talking about funding, giving guidance on that kind of direction. I don't think our plan is pretty loose as far as the park trails and open spaces expansion of Big Rock. So I think anything contiguous and in the area are fine for our park plan. That's kind of my thoughts on that funding. I know I asked Dana today to check, you know, we have about 300,000 obligated, nothing in contract yet, of course, but as we go through the design process for phase 2. So we have some monies kind of earmarked to be spent. That would leave about $2 million in the current 308 or the Parks Capital Fund program. So we do have some funding available, obviously not enough for construction, but certainly enough to start down the rabbit hole of acquisition, and then, you know, possibly leading to some negotiations. We could simply contact each property owner adjacent, and in fairness, you know, send a letter like, hey, the city's interested in expanding some of its spaces around the park. I think we can come up with some terms, even at the CAL, like, you know, green space, soft surface trails, those ancillary park kind of things that aren't super high development related, because we want to develop the park as it is, but around it, keeping some green space, keeping some trees, integrating some trails. I think that's, from what I've heard from everybody, kind of the tenor of that expansion adjacent. We all know there are sensitive areas around. You know, Laura and I have seen pre-apps before, and there's some wet on the front of these pieces. Obviously, this piece is mapped via our work, as well as offsite on the county, and you can see some lowland stuff there. So there's not a lot of clean space, which will lead us to that kind of trails, interpretive signage, and just kind of regular, you know, native canopy. So that's what I've brought forward for us to chat about. Laura, I don't know if we want to add anything before we have some council Q&A and discussion. Mayor,
I don't really have anything to add, Steve, other than, you know, we do need to talk about those other items, which is the park trails and open space plan in general. We talked about partnerships too, as well. I think that's on some of our teacher slides. But this, I mean, we're doing this early, so that's good news. But we do have limited, you know, funding sources in general, so we'll just need to be cautious as we move forward.
Okay, do we want to go ahead and open the floor for discussion now? Sure. Okay, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Councilmember Schaefer.
I didn't even raise my hands. So I'm definitely out of order. But anyway, I believe it was Councilmember Naplin that raised the, you know, the kind of the thought of the possibility of acquiring additional property around Big Rock. And the potential for that to actually maybe, you know, modify what we currently are thinking for this additional 10, you know, adjacent 10 acres that we have right now. I would personally be in favor of at least exploring this a bit further. Steve, you mentioned the possibility of just contacting the property owners to see if there's any interest at all on their part in you know, in selling, you know, part or all of their property to the city. If you know, if we can, you know, do that, I'm all in favor of it. I think that, you know, we need to consider it now as opposed to later.
Yeah, and I think to that point, Rick, we would really want everybody on board, because you don't want to tinker, in my experience, with property purchases. Like, say you might and then like not fulfill like something, where we would come back in a few years and, you know, maybe burn a bridge. So it's like, you know, hey, we are serious, great, the city is going to reach out to all these property owners. We're interested in acquiring some more space that's contiguous with our current parks in part or whole, please reach out to us. Pretty simple stuff. I think, I would certainly want to make sure we have everybody's support on an action like that, just to be clear with folks that it's not like it's kind of possible. It's like, hey, if you're interested, we're going to try to work forward on setting that up. So that would be my only thought.
Good point. Good point.
Councilmember Naplin and then Councilmember Isaacson.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on sort of what started this idea is looking at a partnership with King County Parks. Potentially, I have had a lot of conversations over a long period of time, and I know some of the other organizations in the Valley have had conversations about King County needing to provide park space, both active and passive, possibly for this area. Right now, it's Duvall Park, which is right off the highway and is not very usable at all. And that is the park that is serving this vast area of unincorporated and also our residents here in Duvall, and it's insufficient. I think the county has acknowledged it multiple times. And in conversations I've had and others have had, there's been a lot of openness to partnering and looking at possible property acquisitions. Is it a partnership where they, provide funds for us to purchase? Do they purchase it? You do see parks here and there where they're joint parks. They're a Duvall Park and a King County Park. Maybe we have shared maintenance responsibilities, because honestly, this park, Big Rock Ball Park, serves a vast area of unincorporated residents. It serves residents from Carnation. It's our only turf field for this very, very large area, really the Ripley School District boundaries, which is much, much larger than just the city of Duvall, and a service need more than what, in my opinion, the taxpayers of city of Duvall can afford. So in my opinion, we really need to focus on trying to figure out how we could partner with King County and help those residents of the unincorporated have space to use and help contribute to city of Duvall. And the levy that was passed, the King County Parks levy, does have acquisition money. There's community partnerships and grants money. Lots of different conversations that I think could be had and should be had before we start looking at only our own purse of money and looking only at something that city of Duvall will have to maintain forever. And so the other thing I wanted to point out is not just the elbow room of green space around this park. I think it would be beneficial to have an alternate access point potentially coming from Baton. And I've seen this in a lot of parks where they're encumbered by wetlands or different things. You might have a parking lot on the opposite side of the park and there's just a trail that might get you through a more encumbered part to get to the main active space. So you wouldn't have to, there is a wetland there, but is there a potential to get people from one side to the other if a parking lot can be put somewhere else? So I want to brainstorm all the possibilities before we design out that phase 2 completely, without considering those other possibilities. And I really think partnering with King County Parks, it needs to be done. City of Duvall taxpayers cannot be on the hook to provide all park space for, an area that's, 4 times bigger than just the residents here. It's not fair to our taxpayers, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I would, I'm sure others can respond as well, but I would say partnerships for sure, my experience, need to start at the elected level. When I asked Butch for funding for a grant for park expansion, that's one thing, but I think developing that connection. So I don't know if, Laura and Larry, you have experienced this. Do we go to a county council meeting and present the request? Do we meet with, Sarah Perry's office first? There's a lot of things that have to start to be planted to get that action. Administratively, I can apply for a grant, but again, staff on the county side can't team with us until they have some better direction through it, you know, like an interlocal or some kind of agreement and arrangement. And that's definitely, obviously, staff are the administrative arm of that action, but I think it's those discussions with the elected folks on the county side that I think must occur. And I don't discredit or think against anything Councilmember Naplin said. So it's good. If you've all seen the movie, oh boy, what is it? I'm the guy, George Banks from Father of the Bride. My wife calls me Bummer Man. I'm always delivering, being the bummer. So I don't have a lot. I will say it as a staffer. I don't have a lot of hope in that process being fast or completely successful, but I think we can try. I think that's a tough thing too. You know, timing is everything. So, you know, we can do what we can, but I think we certainly need some kind of team effort to go after the electeds discussion and have it with the other side.
I just want to throw out that I think that request was, they're doing the planning for the unincorporated region, or do you know what I'm talking about?
Conley Valley planning.
Yeah. And there were definitely a lot of community input regarding parks and needing those spaces. And so that's the planning process for the unincorporated portion a lot, right? I mean, maybe you could explain it better. The unincorporated area doesn't have their own city to make their planning. So they kind of plan in these other ways. And there's been room for feedback and it's been pretty transparent. And I definitely have seen that residents in this area, in this greater area, are asking for more recreational facilities. So, I mean, this might be a really good time for us to also echo that and build on what the unincorporated residents are asking for. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that it might be good timing.
Thank you, Councilmember Naplin. Councilmember Isaacson?
Yeah, so as I listen to the conversation, I have one question before I continue with my comments. Steve, were you saying that the portion that we're adding is actually is not in the city of Duvall?
Yeah, currently it's a
King
county parcel. We can annex it anytime, we just haven't. But it is technically underlying land in King County.
And so I love the whole idea of what Councilmember Naplin is saying. However, I'm afraid that trying to acquire more land or do boundary line adjustments would totally slow down the process we already are working on with our citizens for the current. Is there any way that we could take these the funds that we're trying to pursue and use that to continue with? I mean, we've already looking at quite a big bill with the acres that we're adding. I mean, could that King County money be used to do that? I mean, we already in our two council meetings ago talk about this bill being so much more than any of us expected. It's like, I mean, I'm afraid of biting off more when we can't even get done what we're trying to do with our funding, and that dovetails right into what Councilmember Naplin's concern seems to be as well, is not just what it costs to build it, but also maintain it. We continue down that same concept with the county with at least half of this park that we currently have, and then we phase in more as we establish our relationship. That's my concern. If I do that now, we're already doing everything delayed, and we'll be forever before we get anything.
You cut out a little bit, Councilmember Isaacson. Oh, there you are. Can you repeat the last thing you said? No, froze. Froze.
Yes. My biggest concern with trying to reach out with the county, which is for the lake, the funds that we probably don't have.
John,
phase 2, attempting to acquire some of these funds to assist us.
Councilmember Isaacson, if you turn your video off, maybe we can hear you better. Otherwise, you could email your comments to us. Okay, maybe try again, see if we can hear you better. No?
Nope. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. So
That's better.
Is that any better?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Turn my video off, sorry. So the end of my statement was just trying to summarize my overall concern is if we tried to acquire more land or do boundary line adjustments and tie that funding together to do this whole thing at once, it would be a huge delay in getting anything done at all. So could we do baby steps and going through the process of establishing that relationship with King County, like Councilmember Naplin said, with the current plan funding, and then continue down the path of expanding once we've established those processes and relationships.
Thank you, Councilmember Isaacson. Do you have any comments on that, Director Laniszewski?
I mean, there's nothing that marries us or binds us to the county in any sort of grant. We can obviously ask, but again, I think if they're, and Councilmember Naplin, I haven't seen a meeting publication for the Snow Valley kind of parks planning for quite a while. I don't know if I just got cut off that list or not. But yeah, I certainly there's got to be work, I think, on the elected to elected side to start the conversation and get in as many angles as we can if we do want to try to have them be partners on this. Timelines are as loose as we want. There's nothing making us do anything with anything outside of the land. We do have a funding commitment from King County on the design, right? We have $100 grand from them for the current 10 acres, not adding any more per se. We can go back and look at the grant pool. I think most of it is over for this year, but again, we can go check what's out there. But yeah, I think operationally, like you said, the county has its own monies from the levy to spend for county parks, right? Everybody got a piece, and then the county has their own bucket to pull out of. So I know there's funding available, and I know they were certainly wanting to try to do something in the rural East King County area, but I'm not sure how to staff wise to extract or partner with them. I think it's certainly bigger than staff.
Director Thomas has something to add.
Just a couple of things to add to that, Steve, and for the council is the mayor and I did meet with King County staff about 2 months ago for the Snoqualmie Valley sub-area planning process, but we haven't heard anything back since. And one of the items we did talk about was recreational opportunities. After the levy process for King County, they pretty much disbanded their traditional park planning committee. And I'm not sure if it's now been really absorbed into the working group through Snavers Snoqualmie. And if that's the case, we should probably know that as a city. And then Steve, one thing that we probably should just add to this too is we do lack some ability for grants because our park plan is old. So we have to become RCO eligible again. They have grants that we don't have to be RCO certified, but they do, most of them you do. And so I think thinking about that, Steve, is that's probably should be one of our highest priorities is to work on our park plan so that we're eligible for grants, because I don't know what King County's requirements are. I don't think we have to be RCO certified for their grant process, which is good, but we certainly do if we want to request money through RCO.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions? Mayor?
If Councilmember Mercer doesn't have anything to add. I think we all want bigger parks, but the elephant in the room is we desperately need a city hall. We're 10 years overdue. And I'm very concerned about putting eggs in a basket for recreation when our staff don't have a safe place to work. And I say safe place specifically when we have FBI facilities being attacked by people with AR-15s. Government is no longer a safe place to be and work. And we don't have even safe spaces for our employees to work at this point. We desperately need an emergency operations center. We need our staff under one roof. We're spending over $1 million to renovate a building just to handle the staff that we have today. We have to get moving on a city hall, or the city is going to fall apart at some point. Or we're going to end up in an emergency situation where we're going to have to do something and it's not going to be planned and it's not going to be done well. And we're already looking at, if we had started this process 5 years ago, as presented in the budget 5 years ago, we would have been able to build that facility for between 4 and 8 million maximum. We're already double that 5 years later. And we need to think, I encourage the council to really think seriously about what it takes to operate this city and what it takes to provide for our residents, because we don't even have the basics at this point. And that needs to be first and foremost, you've got to wear an oxygen mask if you're going to save anybody. And that's not happening right now. In addition to the fact that we already know that we're going to need multiple new parks workers just to handle the parks that we've got online, and still have major staffing holes for the day-to-day work for the facilities that we have today. So I absolutely love the idea of expanding this right now, but I believe strongly that our number one priority needs to be making sure we have safe facilities for our employees and places for our community to meet, which we don't have right now. And that we need to make sure that we are focused on our municipal financial plan and that long-term planning, and carrying out, in fact, capital projects that have been in this biennium that we haven't been able to get done because priorities shifted, or direction changed from council after a budget was passed. And those are capital projects that we promised to the community that we haven't been able to get done yet. So I'm very, very hesitant as well about adding on another major project right now until all of this stuff is sorted out. I have the biggest legal responsibility of anybody in this room. And I'm terrified every day that something's going to happen and it's going to blow up. And you know who has to handle that? Me and staff. So the intentions are really great here, but we have a very serious situation at the city. And this discussion actually about a new facility has been going on for over 15 years. And we still haven't been given the authority to do the actual planning. We've got the ARC analysis that's nearly done, which is going to help. But we are not going to have the facilities to operate the city into the future if we don't do something now. And it's definitely tied into having the staff, the capacity, and the money. Parks is a lot of that is general fund. You have parks impact fees, you get grants. What takes to build a city hall? General fund, all the other funds, grant funding, et cetera. Now is also probably the best position time that the city's ever been to move forward and garner funding from outside sources and reducing the burden on that building on our taxpayers. If we don't do it now, it's going to cost them more in the long run. And we already are seeing that with the remodel of the public works building and the police building. Partly COVID, partly supply chain, partly inflation. But I guarantee that if we had started that process 5 years ago, we would be building a new city hall right now at pre-negotiated rates that would be much lower than we're paying for basic remodel services right now. So I think it's really, these projects are really important. My kids are heavy users of the parks. It's important to the community. But when something happens and the community doesn't have a government that can function, it's all going to come back. And if the city cannot do its job to take care of its community, we're screwed. And we're not doing our job. And so I know this is an ongoing issue, but I'm going to continue to raise this because we don't have the bandwidth to apply for a lot of the grants that we could even receive right now. We don't have the staff to build the projects, even if we have the money. We're not getting the capital projects that are already approved done. And that's a failure of the city as a whole. And we need to move forward and get these things done that we've promised, that have been approved, and that the community has supported. They support this. They also need to understand that we can't just snap our fingers and get things done. It takes millions and millions of dollars, thousands of staff hours, tons of work on behalf of the administration and council to build the relationships to get this money. And frankly, I don't think we're well suited to get the parks money right now. I think we're better suited to be going forth and taking care of basics and making sure we have places for our staff that are safe. Also, economic development is huge. We don't even have a conference room for our staff to meet with business folks. We don't even have a conference room. If we're going to be spending millions of dollars and we want to focus on economic development, we have to also look at what the city looks like to the people coming into our town. The city looks great. Our buildings are horrific.
I feel like we're getting
So,
a tiny bit off topic.
No, it's not off topic, but this is the why I needed to share with the group that this is my opinion on this subject, and this is why. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Schaefer.
Let's see, first of all, I am looking forward to our next read on facility assessment, on facility assessment. And I completely agree. We need to get this one way or another on that. And hopefully this next readout will give us a, at least, clearer directions than what we have today on that. That being said, I'm still in favor of at least approaching the property owners with the caveat that there's no promises. This is strictly an exploratory question, but to see if they have any interest at all in selling any of the adjacent property or around there. And this would be additional work, hopefully not much, but it would be additional work. I believe that little bit of information will help us make some decisions. If nobody is interested, well, okay, that kind of, make some decisions right there. If there's, some light interest or even strong interest, yeah, it may lead to delays, and we may decide we can't afford it. I'm not saying we can't afford it, but I think we need to ask. I don't like operating without knowing information that's relatively easy to obtain, and I'd like to obtain.
Thank you, Councilmember Schaefer. Councilmember Napland.
Yeah, I just wanted to say again that, if there was additional property purchase, it's not about developing it right away. It's about being able to plan a project with an understanding of what you have in total. And so potentially the project could be planned in a better long-term layout if we knew we could get additional property. And the other thing is, with King County, they absolutely have property acquisition money. There were conversations with, I don't want to name specific employees, but with the person at King County who manages the community partnerships and grants, we have willing nonprofits that would partner as well, that increases your eligibility for these grants. And, I understand that we have limited funds, and what I'm trying to approach here is to, instead of using our funds, use King County's funds, possibly partner with them. There's absolutely an acknowledgement that Duvall Park is insufficient. One of the big focuses on the parks levy this time was equity and trying to reach the underserved. And if you look at the map, the rural unincorporated area is underserved in parks in this area, significantly underserved. And so, I just think this is perfect timing. And I know the mayor feels strongly that this is perfect timing to build a city hall. And I think there's a lot of, I think the same could be said about acquiring additional land for this park. I think that there's the levy passed. There's programs available, and if we don't do it now, or at least explore and see what we can do now, we could lose our opportunity. So anyway, I understand what the mayor is saying, but for long-term ensuring that our area has sufficient park space, especially for the unincorporated residents as well, I think advocating now is important.
So Director Laniszewski.
You're on mute.
So just some thoughts on those topics. Like, I'm not sure if there's a cart before the horse, you know, what's first here, chicken and egg kind of thing, but maybe we really need a small group who's willing to have conversations, you know, with the county folks. Because again, administratively, no offense to us as staffers, but we don't make those types of overall decisions, good or bad, as it comes to those funds available. There's got to be something else helping the other side, i.e. the county, push towards, you know, partnering. So again, through a grant, I can't make a partnership commitment. They can say all they want as far as staff that it's a great idea, but until somebody as a policymaker is behind the process and the project, right? So maybe if there's some folks who are interested in participating and reaching out to the county, you know, conversations can occur. Maybe there's a meeting set up, you know, just to have that. I'm more than happy to try to help, but I do believe it's got to be you know, I think Sarah Perry is kind of the easiest way in to get us and you know, our side of the group at the table with them to start that conversation. That's kind of my opinion. You know, asking a question of folks about purchases, I think it's fair, but I'm not hearing everybody buying into, you know, if we had to spend our own money on additional space, I don't know that I hear there's a lot of buy-in. I'm not trying to pressure anybody because I was asked to just facilitate the talk here, but I want to be realistic. Again, you know, Bummerman, he delivers. I'd like to get, you know, as many things for the city off of our dime as possible. You know, I do live here too, so it certainly makes sense. I'm just not sure I can manufacture that. I think it has to be I or any staff can manufacture. I think it has to come from policymakers. So I think we need some volunteers to start conversations with people at the county, in my opinion.
Mayor O'Connor.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind the council too that the Parks Levy just passed, and I believe it's a 9-year levy. So those funds are available on an annual basis. So we have massive amounts of funding that came to the state and coming through the federal government right now that will never see that level of funding again, specifically for local governments. And we're not going to get that money again. So the Parks Levy is something that is ongoing and gets renewed by the voters. The voters overwhelmingly support it. It's not a funding source that's going away. So yes, King County wants to partner us. Yes, we're underserved. But the people that run this city and make the water flush and make the streets good are being underserved today. So when we think also about retention and employee recruitment, another thing that people think about is their work environment. I ask anybody that thinks that things are great in our city's facilities to stay there for a week and see how pleasant it is, especially in winter when the heat is going hot and cold and you're walking on floors that are uneven. So parks are very important. And again, this funding source goes on for a long period of time. And to Director Thomas's point, we still haven't updated the Parks, Trails, and Open Space Plan that was budgeted for 2018. So this is how far we are behind on core documents and core things that we have a responsibility to do for our community. And I would ask that we, you know, take a step back and focus on what needs to be done now so that we can get these big things done in the future.
Councilmember Schaefer.
I guess I'd like to make a suggestion, and I want feedback specifically from the other council members on this. To simplify this a little bit, I'd like to take the county out of the discussion or the immediate discussion and focus strictly on seeing if any of these property owners have any interest in selling their property. Irregardless of we get help from the county or not. I think that information will be key to help us make some decisions. And I'd like to specifically hear from John, from Ron, and everyone else here in the room.
I can just go around the room if you'd like and
yeah,
ask if
that'd be great.
we're interested in reaching out to the property owners. Councilmember Mercer?
Yeah, I've been quiet partially because didn't want to cough. But you know, I'm sort of a mixed view, and you know, Rick will acknowledge in the Parks Committee, you know, I'm very cognizant of the opportunity cost in terms of the parcels. At the same time, I also know from history of some of the adjacent parcels, there's already some history there in terms of who would sell and who wouldn't sell. And I am actually very sensitive about surfacing an offer in this climate, and you know, in interest, one, because you know, the potential for, you know, the price being potentially inflated, but also more so that I think we really need to be aligned in terms of, one, that we have an understanding of what the property would cost, irrespective of county involvement, since that's not guaranteed, and then an intent to actually move forward with an acquisition, because I do, you know, agree we shouldn't be putting out feelers unless we're prepared to execute in some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, our messaging needs to be really crisply shaped around that. But at a broader, you know, level, I'm also it's funny, the mayor sort of jumped in. I was going to actually surface a comment if we were talking about land acquisition and exploratory, some of the capital acquisitions for the city hall, not necessarily from a planning perspective. That's actually something that I would prioritize. And I think that's one of the challenges I've had since coming onto the council is I haven't clearly seen a stacked rank list in terms of where we place some of these, because there's always a list of things we want to do at the same time, but there's a limited amount of capacity, there's a limited amount of funding. And then there is, you know, I think as the mayor articulated, previous commitments that are either behind or haven't landed. So that would be super helpful for me, and that's some work. I'll do some outreach to get a clearer picture in terms of how some of these sit in just a purely stack ranked in terms of where we should be prioritizing them from within the existing budget, and then just within council priorities. But the short of it is, to Rick's specific question is, I'm not comfortable doing the outreach just, you know, as an exploratory exercise, unless we have some framework around, you know, as I said, can we afford it? Do we have clearly articulated income streams that we can execute against? And then what is the likelihood of moving forward? Because I think in the absence of those, it's not necessarily conversation. So that was a really long answer, but I didn't speak earlier, so I wanted to get a couple thoughts out at the same time.
Thank you, Councilmember Mercer. Councilmember Isaacson, did you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, maybe I didn't articulate it too well earlier. I mean, what I was trying to say earlier was that, you know, the concept I love, but I just think that we have so much to do with the current planned expansion. Everything from understanding where we're gonna get the money from, what the design is gonna be, when's it gonna start, when's it gonna be done. If we start exploring adding something else to it that could make it better, I agree, it's just gonna further delay it, further complicate it. And, you know, I think that we could start trying to find these processes to bring more money and more King County involvement in what we're already doing, and then move forward another phase at a later date because of the things that the mayor highlighted. But that's kind of what I was alluding to. I was like, we have so many things that need to be done that in previous council meetings that we still don't have a clear plan for. We don't have clear funding for. You know, we constantly have the debates about, well, where we're gonna get the money, where we're gonna do this, but now we're possibly taking more staff resources and more funding, because that is funding, paying them to do this work. And it's just like looking for perfection when, you know, perfection is the worst enemy of good enough, and move forward with the next phase. It is a great idea. I'm not trying to slam the idea. I just think that I'm not on board with distracting from what we already have unfinished business until we get a good plan for that, personally. even though it doesn't seem like a lot of work, I would then default to staff and say, how much of your time would it take to reach out to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, potentially 6 different property owners with potential what ifs, maybes, and then that a ton of questions coming back.
Thank you, Councilmember Isaacson. Councilmember Naplin, did you want to weigh in?
I'm in favor of looking into the neighboring properties. I mean, King County even has an acquisitions team that they use if they were interested in partnering with us. I think, you know, when you're designing this phase, knowing the totality of property you have to work with helps you make a better design. So I know people want to see this get done, but it would just be really sad to design it a certain way, thinking this is all you have, and a short time later, you know, regret how you designed it. So I just want to throw that out there. I'm in favor of just might as well look around.
Thank you, Councilmember Naplin. Well, I feel like I should weigh in. Initially, my thought was, why not reach out to the homeowners? And I really like that you brought up a proposal of being able to just do a simple lot line adjustment and getting an addition to the park without buying another entire, 9 acres or, so that kind of is more palatable. But I guess Councilmember Mercer brought up a really good point. If we're going to do this, and we really need to know that we can afford to do it, and that we kind of have an idea of how much that would cost for those slivers of land, So I just, I guess I'm on the fence, but I guess I would be interested in doing it if we could know how much it would cost and if we can afford it, before we just blanket the neighborhood with inquiries, is my thought. So it's not a very firm answer, but.
So just on that topic, I mean, nothing is pressing and pushing. I think I would still love to hear somebody want to reach out to the county side, just because we can. All of this can happen commensurately. I think we should have enough time on the next cow maybe to have a follow-up. I mean, we can do some rough numbers and just kind of draw a couple things, and maybe if there's, I'm sure I could fit an hour in and find an hour between now and the next meeting. We do have a dead week. Maybe push the properties adjacent to their legally conformant size and see what's left, and then add that to ours and look at some numbers. Value is going to be tough to decide on here. So maybe I go in a range, have a table. It's pretty interactive. Even if I'm there, I could have this on a screen. So I'm not opposed to looking at some dollar signs. I'm not opposed to contacting, my staff peers at King County, but I still think this has got to be, if we want to funnel money and interest from the county, it has to come from that additional policy side. So that sounds fair to folks. We can do a little work. Won't take much work there. I can put it in an extra week, and then just look at the value of those parcels, maybe have a little different image on the screen, and go from there. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, I think any more than an hour at this stage is too much, especially during budget.
I lost our intern this week too. He's gone. So
yes,
it's a great intern project. Okay, and then any other questions or thoughts on that? Or Laura and I have a little self-serving information to share if we're done with that topic.
Oh, okay.
Kind of on par. All right, let me make sure I'm on the right screen.
And then I think we should probably say that we don't have full consensus on this item, that we're bringing back some additional information.
Yeah. So you are all aware we have quite a new amassing of parks in the Rio Vista parcel, as well as the Toll Brothers parcel. And part of their obligations are, 1, naming their park, 2, signing the park. We have come to terms that we as staff, I think I can speak for the mayor, don't like the signs we have. We think we should have a consistent and maybe a separate style of signs for our park programming, we are more than happy to take some work through process to come up with like a park sign master plan. Laura, is that the right terminology? But yeah, these obligations are required of the you know, Toll Brothers and KB Homes, and like, hey, we're ready to put our signs in. What do you guys want? We're like, well, we know what we like, but we don't have a real program. So this one really kind of just was clean, simple, nice. You can add a QR code. This can be two-sided. Let's say it was down in McCormick Park. You know, you click your QR code, you get a map of all the parks in the city, but every city park could have a signage system that looked like this. So not just a sign, but more of a system. I don't even know how to get started on naming a park. That's way above my pay grade. I'm just a facilitator. So we have easy things in our code for roads, but we have nothing really guiding us on names. But to that avail, we did talk about refreshing some signs, you know, size, cost, all that is real. So we're not arguing it just needs to happen overnight to all 13 parks, but I think we should be building on, you know, and we will put some proposal into the budget process to have something like this. Maybe we don't do every sign or every park every year, but we, you know, we pick a handful, a couple, try to do a few a year. You know, so this is the one we found, Wayne County. You can go to their website. I don't even know there. I think they're back east somewhere, Indiana, maybe. Laura kind of found this. I went to their site as well. Benny, our intern, kind of had a little fun with something consistent. That sign there, he kind of made up. It uses the color palette that our current logo is. You know, he obviously had a little fun with a hamburger and a giraffe and all that nonsense, but something like this, which actually has recreational designated logos that are consistent in national parks paperwork across our country. So just something to really like show that we have parks, and a lot of our parks are great. They're not huge, all of them. They're not known, all of them, but they are in places that people would frequent if we had maybe a little more signage. I think kind of some kind of sign at McCormick, which had, you know, a backside to this, the way it could be placed to bring more attention to our parks. You know, we've been working with who's the grant agency, Laura, that's coming out tomorrow?
Oh, I'm sorry. It is Mountain Sound Greenway.
Right. They're coming out working on an economic development video. You know, they have a video shoot scheduled for 4:30 at Big Rock. At that time, you're going to have the little micro kids on field 3. You're going to have football and cheer on field 2, and then the bigger kids on field 1. It's going to be packed. Like, the video is going to be awesome. So I think, you know, with that kind of project going on and having 2 parks that need signage that are new, we thought this was something that folks would probably like. And I think everybody agrees, a consistent sign program, a fresh look, and something that can really showcase our parks. Something we should have.
And just to add on to that, Steve, too, like we're starting to get questions are like, what private parks do we have? Because people stay off of them, right? And then what are our public parks? And we've got 2 brand new, or actually 3 parks that we don't really have. It's not branded, not that we're trying to brand, but we're trying to bring some sort of continuity. And the best way to do that really is through signage. And I thought that Ben did a good job just kind of taking the one that we saw at Perrin Park and kind of re-looking at that. The one thing that Steve and I talked about is, you know, our branding is a little bit older. So, you know, do you want to go, you know, would we go with our city brand, or or do we want to just come up with a city park logo? And then we could worry about the branding of the new city logo at some point in the future. So there's a couple of different things and options, but I think we're just looking for feedback, Steve, on kind of maybe some direction.
Yeah, I think if we had some direction that this is a great idea from folks, then we can at least tell the developers, hey, it's on us. Time is of the essence. We get it, but we'd like to have a little time to have consistent signage. And, you know they owe it. They're not trying to not do it, but I think we'd like to have the right sign done, kind of thing. Comments?
Any comments or feedback?
Yeah.
Councilmember Schaefer.
First of all, I think the consistent signage for our parks is a terrific idea. It it really contributes to the overall attractiveness of the city. It certainly contributes to one of my main concerns as far as economic development and bringing in out of town business. It'll help that, and it just makes you feel better overall about our city. And the little logos below, with possibly the exception of the draft, are very useful. They actually tell people at a glance what facilities that park has. I think a lot of our residents actually don't know about all of our parks. They don't know about the facilities. This would help them as well. So I think for a relatively small investment, I think this is a good way to spend our money.
Councilmember Naflin.
Yeah, I just want to second what he said. I think one thing that we're noticing with some of the new parks that are coming online is they're tucked into new developments. And there could be confusion about, is this a public park? Where is it? Well, I heard there was a park, and I think of the one in Fox Hollow. I think there's still a lot of people that don't even know about that little park. And potentially, if we had some type of a theme, you could also have wayfinding signs to say, hey, down this street, and the sign would look like a city park sign, so you would know, hey, there's a public park down there. I'm going to go check that out. So I think it would really help with making people understand what's a public park, what can I use, where is it? Because there are quite a few people that I have mentioned that Fox Hollow Park, and they're like, there's a park in there? I thought that was just that neighborhood's park. So anyway, great. I like it. Thanks for bringing it forward.
And that point exactly, Councilmember Naflin, the Toll Brothers, they have the columnar stone that identifies all their play spaces. And we were like, he's like, I've got rock and this and that. And we're like, okay, well, maybe a different kind of rock, but we need to really differentiate that is a public park. And don't shoot the messenger, barman, he delivers. But some of those homeowners that will become adjacent property owners to that park are going to feel like it's theirs if it's not distinctly and easily distinguishable that it is a public park. So yeah.
And just to add to that, we were looking at, because when I found the Perrin Park, they had like a whole plan set. So they had like directional signs too. So maybe we pick parks that people don't really know as a park, like maybe that one, and we would have a directional sign too, the intersection that goes in as well.
Councilmember Isaacson.
Just concur. Just wanted to say I concur with everyone's comments.
Councilmember Mercer.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be short. I guess just one of the things I'd say is, branding matters. We oftentimes don't really put a lot of emphasis about it, but it does bring a sense of cohesiveness. It also, there's a community brand we're trying to build. I think the other value is, we talked earlier, I think the mayor mentioned in terms of that we were behind on some things. It actually makes some projects tangible. So it actually, is a method for the community to know, particularly when new parks are coming online and we get feedback about the growth, that there are net benefits associated with that growth as well. So I just wanted, I'll sort of stop there, but I think there's multiple outputs of moving forward with a unified branding approach for the parks.
Thank you. So correct me if I'm wrong, Director Laniszewski, but were you trying to get input on whether we should do a new parks logo versus putting the city logo on there? Is that? No.
Again, I'm more of a facilitator. I think Laura's part of the creative dream team here, who's got the process side of this to run us through. So I think we do want a process to come up with something that is like the city parks logo, whether it looks very similar to what we've got or if it's a spin-off. I don't think we are set on anything other than we saw that image. We really thought it was, it grabs you, you can see it's some sort of public park, and we think they should be everywhere. So yeah, I think we would start with the planning commission, Laura, and go from there.
Okay. Wonderful. Any other feedback?
There won't be giraffes in it.
There will be.
No. Maybe we'll have one of those 3D things where if you look hard enough, you might find it kind of thing. But
Thank you.
that's all I have.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to the next agenda item. Director Mason on biennial budget format.
Good evening, Dana Mason, Finance Director. Let me share my screen. And this is actually a conversation that, or a discussion that was requested by Councilmember Naplin. So what I'll do is I'll just show, especially for our council members who are kind of new, I'll show you what our current biennial budget format looks like, and then a couple examples, and let Councilmember Naplin kind of facilitate this discussion. So. There we go. Okay, so here's our current biennial budget format. And this is the third, or the 2023-2024 budget will be the third budget or biennial budget that the city is having. The first one was 2019-2020. And currently the city lumps together the, so this is a 2021-2022 budget, and both years are lumped together in one biennial budget rather than having two separate budgets. And this is an alternate format. This was an example that was provided by Councilmember Naplin. North Bend also does a biennial budget, and they have two separate years as part of their biennial budget ordinance. And then another format is the city of Snoqualmie, which is a little bit harder to read, but it also separates out the different years. So Councilmember Naplin, I'll kind of let you.
Sure, I didn't know that this is how it was going to go, so I don't have anything formal prepared, but and maybe I should have, and so it's not on you that I didn't realize that. But the idea here is that when the both years are lumped together, it's really hard to understand, you know, what trajectory you're going because it's all lumped together. So are we evenly, so if you look at this right now and you look at the general fund is being drawn down by $1.7 million. And you would wonder, well, is that happening evenly, or did we have enough in the first year, but then we don't have enough in the second year? It's really hard to tell where fund balances are going on these accounts. And that's just one aspect of why I think lumping the years together are difficult. It's hard to get a handle on, you know, do we have sufficient revenue on an annual basis to pay for the expenditures we're budgeting? And when you have a lot of changes to your staffing, you're adding staffing midway through the biennium, or maybe you're adding staffing midway through the second year. There's really not an understanding of, on an annual basis, are my operating expenses, are my revenues sufficient to cover the expenses? And so even when you go into reporting, it's very difficult because you'll look at your budget or your financial reports, and it might say in the second year that you've used 75% of your 2-year allotment of money. And you won't know, well, am I using more of it up in the second year? You know, am I bringing down fund balance? I find it very confusing. And when I've looked at other cities' reporting and I've looked at other cities' budgets, because I just like looking at other cities' budgets, I find it very interesting how they spend their money, where their money comes from, just to try to learn more about, you know, what we're doing here in our city and how it compares. But what I've noticed is they definitely, from what I have seen, it's more common to break it down into individual years. It doesn't mean you're doing an annual budget. All it means is when you do your 2-year budget, you break it into the separate years. So I am not saying we need to go to an annual budget. It's just when it is presented and reported on, you are looking at things from an annual viewpoint. So I don't know if there's any questions. I'll just throw it out there. One thing I saw is, shoot, was it Anacortes or I can't remember which city. Do you remember? There was one city that actually switched from a biennial budget to an annual budget. They went as far as not just breaking it into the 2 years, but they went all the way back to an annual budget because they just felt like there was too much influx and it was too difficult to manage when everything was lumped into the 2 years. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. So I'm curious how other people feel. You know, I spend a lot of time, like I said, looking at budgets, and I struggle, and I'm even a numbers person. I struggle trying to get a handle on are revenue sufficient for expenditures when I look at the way it's presented in our city.
Do we have any comments or questions from council or thoughts? Councilmember Schaefer.
Let's see. First of all, I think I don't have an opinion on breaking it up more, on a more granular basis. I think the people that deal with that, the finance committee and Director Mason, and those folks who want to are in a good position. Okay, that's a good, better position to make that decision. My only question though is, would this be more work for staff? And Director Mason, maybe you can help answer that.
I think that the budget portion of it, just dividing it into 2 years, is not the problem. I think the reporting, when you have 2 separate budgets, I think the reporting portion of it will get a little more complicated and might not be as simple for someone who's not super into the details to read. So I think lumping it together for reporting just makes it it's easier for people to read. And I've done a lot of searching trying to find some good reports, quarterly reports, where they have it separated out, and it just gets super complicated for someone who is not really into details.
Mayor Okelander.
Thank you. Since we do have council members that weren't on board when we switched to a biennial process, one of the key reasons to switch to a biennial process is to make it easier long-term to budget. Because year to year, you're looking at the same revenue forecast, right? Whether it's 1 year or 2 years, you're doing the same forecasting. Okay. So when you go to a 2-year budget, you're able to spread your expenses over 2 years. When you have a 1-year budget, what often happens is that fights happen over existing projects that don't get done in that single year, and that money gets taken away and reprioritized. And then you're constantly not getting your priorities achieved. So there's one consequence of going back to looking at an annual budget. Another reason we went to this is to increase staff efficiency and also long-term make it easier to forecast. Our finance director does an amazing job with our quarterly and our annual financial reports. And I'm not a numbers person, and I really understand our budget and understand where our savings are, where our reserves are. So I get confused when I hear we don't know where the money is, but yet we have huge fund balances that we see on our sheets and in our financial reporting, where all of that information is accessible to the public. I don't support, from an administrative and staffing standpoint, switching it out into 2 years, partially for what Dana said. Also, the fact that we are about to launch a major financial software, and council's going to have access to the public, every single piece of financial information at the city at their fingertips, and be able to pull your own reports. So I think that, this is our 3rd biennial budget process. If we start switching how we're going to do things, then we will have a 10-year period where nobody can figure out what's going on because it's been switched up so many times. So there's more to it than that. I can understand wanting to see it year to year, but it also creates a lot of confusion when you plan your projects, especially capital projects that take 2 years, and you put it in a 1-year budget, and then you put it in a 2nd-year budget. And then you get new council members coming in saying, why are we paying this much for this last year, and we're paying this much for this year? And then accusations of lack of transparency start to expire. I have seen it here in the city of Duvall. And I want to make sure that we are clear and transparent and that people can see things for the long term. If we start looking at on a year-to-year basis, we're never going to reach our long-term goals. I think that's, a lot of cities that do the single year budget have a very difficult time. And it's not just, when you go to that mid-buy, you're looking at each of those years again, all those numbers have to get jumbled around. So you've got a lot more work to do the mid-buy adjustments than if you just kept it the way it is. So I would recommend that we wait until after OpenGov is fully implemented to see if there's even a need to do that. Because of the extensive reporting that's going to come out of that system, people may find that they're able to get what they need just by pushing a button.
Councilmember Mercer, did you have a question, comment? I thought I saw you.
No, I was sort of just digesting. As I said, this is sort of my first rodeo in terms of going through this process. So, I mean, I don't have an opinion, kind of like Councilmember Schaefer indicated. I'll defer to the folks with expertise. That said, to your comment, Mayor Archelander, I know software very often can provide views that do have a lot of overhead to create manually. So it may be, we may be looking for a solution in search of a problem. It may resolve itself. So I would be sort of in favor of waiting as well to see what we get prior to moving forward with a change in approach. But
Councilmember Isaacson, do you have anything to add or any thought?
Yeah, I need to probably follow the budget more, being as new as I am, but in general, I look at the 4 columns. I think I understand it. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it on our current biannual budget. To me, when we do a biannual, I'm thinking, okay, well, I just went from 12 months to 24 months. It's just a longer period of time. Those 4 columns should mean the same thing, but the granularity, I'm assuming the granularity, if needed, is there for our finance director to be able to have access to, or at the different directors levels, if they're given budgets, if we ask them, how are we burning on a project that's due to be done within the biennium? In other words, if it's going to be done in the middle of it, I'm assuming we have the ability to go ask them, or they're going to come let us know if we're behind budget and ask for more funding. But that's an assumption that I'm just believing it's happened out there. Do we have any instances where we've got problems with projects not knowing where their budget is and how they're doing?
No. Easy answer, no.
Thank you, Councilmember. I'd like to weigh in a little bit. I actually understood the budget a lot better before we went to a biennial budget. And my perspective on it has to do with when we make decisions. I think a biennial budget is great if you don't make a lot of changes for those 2 years. And where the problem lies is when we add especially new employees, new positions, and into the second year, what's happening is you're not really seeing year to year what's going on with the budgets. And so the second year, you could just, how do I say it? You're going way over, not you, and I'm not saying you, Director Mason, but you end up going way over on your budget. And it's just very uncomfortable for me. I'm not a numbers person, but I understood the budget so much better before. And I am hopeful that OpenGov will give us more of what we were looking for, which is that transparency where we could, if we want, go in and look at what's going on this year, right? But until we have it, we don't really know. But anyways, I just had to say that I was almost wanting to push for an annual budget again, to be very honest, but I don't think that's what Councilmember Naplin's asking for. She's just asking for the reporting yearly so that we can visually see it better. That's my interpretation. But Director Mason, I will stop talking.
I just wanted to point out that the 2021-2022 biennium was really unusual. We budgeted very conservatively because we just did not know what was going to happen with COVID. So I don't think that's a typical biennium where you'd have that many adjustments mid-biennium or even end of biennium.
Thank you. Mayor Oaklander?
To Councilmember Hoag's point, as far as being easier in all these adjustments, I just want to also acknowledge that previously when we did yearly budgets, we were doing an amendment every quarter. So we were doing budget amendments every quarter, up or down, depending on what needed to get added to the budget or what changed or grants received, et cetera. So it is a normal part of a municipal budget and any government budget to be making adjustments along the way. Your revenue, so prime example, in the biennium budget, our first or second biennial budget, I think it was second in 2020. When COVID hit, we had budgeted conservatively to begin with. Council took the action to make further reductions in the budget during COVID and adjust expectations. So that budget expectation changed and shifted by council direction. And what happened is our revenues at the end of the year came in greater than what was originally budgeted. So there is always going to be fluctuation in the budget. And I think the key is when you do budget amendments, just like we've done with a lot of our reporting, you have the identification of what you're doing, why you're doing it, where the funding source is, and what the funding amount is in those accounts, which is one of the things that we already do on agenda bills. So, and all of this is trackable in every version of the budget. So every time the budget gets amended, it's amended on the lines. It says budget as amended, and you can always see what the original budget is. So that information is already out there. And as far as forecasting, et cetera, our finance director, if sees something in the economy, she's going to change her forecasting and come to us and ask to change her budget if it's downward facing. If it's upward facing, she may say, let's not do anything for a while and wait till the next budget cycle. So this is work that I believe our finance department does very, very well in understanding the financial situations, where our projects are. We have some very lean budgeting, especially by our public works director. And it's not often that his projects come in over budget unless it's something outside of his control. And so that's always going to happen as well. Just like inflation, our household budgets, you're going to have these shifts and changes. All those shifts and changes have to be approved by the city council in an open, transparent fashion. So while I understand, I also want to kind of remind folks that in the previous process, we were actually doing significant more budget amending during the course of the year than we do with the biennial budget. And in fact, council direction has also shifted priorities. And this administration has been told multiple times, although we've had some relief to that this year, with a previous makeup of council, that they only wanted to see new positions once every 2 years. I think we all know that that's not realistic anymore. So those are things to think about. We all have perspectives and experiences. I definitely come to it with both the council perspective and the administrative perspective. And I believe our finance department does an amazing job just making sure that everybody has the information that's asked for and necessary. And frankly, it's information that we never used to have before. So I understand, but I also want to make sure that we're not changing paths and making things more difficult, and also making it more difficult to see what's actually going on with our finances by mucking things around too much.
Thank you. Councilmember Naplin?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, I still think planning and budgeting for 2 years together is important. We are on a biennial budget. I am supportive of that. So I think there might have been some confusion that somehow we would plan each year separately, one at a time. That's not what I'm advocating for. I also wanted to mention that it does seem to be quite typical that the biennial budget in smaller cities is broken up into 2 years. And I think there's a reason for that. And the reason I brought this idea up when I did is because the budget will be built into the new system. And Director Mason did say in our finance meeting that if you did want to have it broken into the 2 separate years, that now would be the time to do it as we're loading it into the new system, because once you start the process, it would be much harder to change later. So I don't want to speak for you, but that's what I had recalled. So I don't know if you want to respond to that, but I want to give you an example of where this has been a struggle of not having the budget broken up into 2 separate years, at least in how things are presented to council and how it makes it difficult to make decisions. So for example, I'll just look in 2021, we had a lot of vacancies, okay? A ton of vacancies. That meant our fund balances really grew. And in 2022, we are starting to hire additional people. There's more expenses. So as we are hiring new people, as we're, approving budget changes, often we're told there's no budget impact. Well, the reason there's no budget impact is we can use surplus from the first year to pay for it in the second year. Does that mean that we have enough money on an ongoing basis to pay for this? Not at all. It just means, yeah, we have enough money in the 2-year budget. We'll use what we didn't use in the first year to pay for it in the second year. Never mind that it's an ongoing expense that we really can't afford on an annual basis. Now, that might sound a little bit extreme, but there have been many, many times where I don't think it's been clear whether we can afford something on an ongoing basis. And so that's why the granularity is confusing. Now, if we wanted to have a 2-year granularity, well, then I would want to know, can we afford this the next 2 years once you have something for the entire 2 years? Now, if we wanted to do that, that would be fine. But the problem is we never look ahead to the next time period. So if you're looking at 2 years and we only did something for partial 2 years, my question would be, well, if that position is funded for the whole term, the whole 2 years, can we afford it in the next one? Is this something we can be sustainable about? And I think the way it is done now, it is almost impossible to understand that. And so that is why I believe a lot of small cities do it, because, there's things in flux. Anyway, if no one wants to do it that way, that's fine. But I'm just trying to explain to you why I feel strongly about it and why I brought it up when I did, because the time to make this change is as we're going into a new budget and as we're building the system into the new OpenGov. So I understand we'll wait and see. Well, it could be more difficult down the line. So
we're almost at 7. I'm not sure quite how to approach this now, because we have Councilmember Isaacson and Director Mason want to speak. Should I
go ahead
proceed?
And then we'll take a 2-minute recess.
Okay. Councilmember Isaacson.
You run out of time. And in all of the staffing and that we've done since I've been here, I've consistently asked the question, can we afford this? And my question is not just in the 2 years, is when we're hiring someone and planning on keeping them past 2 years, I've never heard anyone say no. So I haven't dug into numbers like you have on the finance committee, Councilmember Naplin, but I've always pushed the I believe button that when I've asked that question, that we've got a budget that's going to fund these people in these positions. I would be very sadly surprised if that wasn't true. And if that is the truth, if we really are hiring people and creating things that we cannot afford, then we've got a bigger issue as a city. But I haven't seen that in my short term here. Every time I've asked that question, I've been told, yes, we've looked at it and we can't afford it. What you're saying, I'm hearing, is that we've only looked at it within the current budget and we don't have a plan to put it in the next budget. And if that's really our operating city, we got a bigger issue, I think. And I would be surprised. It's not my impression of our finance director and our staff that we are that short-sighted that we don't look into our next budget or have a plan on how we're going to implement it in that budget. If that's the case, then I think as a council, we need to probably have almost an emergency session on our budget with our staff and say, is this really what's true, what Councilmember Naplin is saying?
Thank you, Councilmember. Director Mason.
So I just wanted to say that, yes, I did say at the FAC meeting that if we were to make the change, that this would be the time to do it, because we do put our the budget into the budgeting software as 2 separate years, and then we combine it. But I also did say that I wanted to look around and see how that would work for reporting on a quarterly basis. And I could not find, and I think I mentioned this to you, Councilmember Naplin, I could not find any good quarterly reports that were simple and straightforward. So I just wanted to address that. And Councilmember Isaacson, we can afford the positions that we have right now. We've said this to council at some point in time, expenses are rising higher than our revenues. So at some point in time, we are going to need to find new revenues, but right now we can't afford them.
Thank you, Director. So before we take our 2-minute break, we have a council planning calendar. If there's any comments about that, council may want to bring them up to us by email. But there is a September calendar, planning calendar. And I know that Councilmember Schaefer had a good of the order item. You wanted to bring it up, you're welcome to.
I will in the next meeting.
Okay, we'll wait. Okay.
You can bring it up during council reports.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So this meeting is adjourned at 7:02. Thank you. We'll take a 2-minute break.
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Sure.
Arms. Yep.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yep, highlighted in
To call the Tuesday, August 16th, 2022 Duvall City Council meeting to order at 7:08 p.m. Would you please join me with the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Councilmember Isaacson. Councilmember Isaacson. Councilmember Schaefer.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem McHenry. Councilmember Mercer.
Here.
Councilmember Hogue.
Here.
Councilmember Napland.
Here.
And Councilmember Lovett. And Mayor Oberlander.
Here. We have a quorum. Are there any additions and corrections to the agenda? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve this evening's council agenda?
So move, Schaefer.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the council agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. With that, we move on to comments for the audience. We do not have anyone physically present. Are any of the callers that are on the line, if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand and our clerk will elevate you to a panelist and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Not seeing any, so we'll go ahead and close comments from the audience. And do we have a motion to approve this evening's consent agenda?
So move, Schaefer.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Moving on to schedule items. First up is the mayor's report. Not much to report. We're deep in budget and receiving department budget presentations. We'll be making decisions here in the next month on those. Did want to share that we had our first Association of Washington Cities Executive Committee meeting, which was an orientation with the Assistant Secretary, with the Vice President and President of the Association of Washington Cities with AWC staff. It was really nice to be in a room with folks and get the full overview of AWC's programs and services. Do want to point out that tomorrow night is the last summer stage concert of the year with Heart by Heart. I want to give a special shout out to Cass Foldeman, who's done an absolutely incredible job yet again of organizing and carrying out our summer stage program. She has consistently been increasing our numbers as far as attendance, and it shows with her selection of artists and how she treats them, that they want to come back. So I want to express my sincere gratitude and hope that we'll see all of you there tomorrow night. And with that, I am done. Do we have a report from the fire district this evening? Okay, we'll move on to the Duvall Police Report with Chief Duvall.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City staff, and members of the community. I'm Chief Duvall of the Duvall Police. I'll be providing you with a police staff report for July 2022. I would like to start with an update on the 4th of July. We did staff additional officers for the 4th. The calls for service were relatively low. We received 5 fireworks complaints between June 15th and July 31st, and 3 of these calls did happen on the 4th. Officer Bleo continues to progress well through his field training program. He is currently in week 7 of the 12 weeks, so he has 5 more to go. The sergeant candidate previously in background has been disqualified, and our focus will now be on training internally for that position. The entry-level candidate that was previously in background was also disqualified. So that leaves us with still having 3 officer openings. We hosted entry-level and oral boards between August 1st and August 3rd to establish a new eligibility list. And then we had chiefs interviews for these candidates on the 3rd and 9th of August. After the interviews, we began the background process on 1 lateral candidate and an entry-level candidate. The police administration specialist has completed her background and medical exam, and we're waiting for the final report on a psychological exam. Once we have all the results and assuming they are favorable, we hope to provide her with an intent to hire sometime next week. We have several ILAs and contracts that we'll be bringing to council over the next few months. There's a SCORE jail amended ILA, which is on the consent agenda tonight. We are wrapping up negotiations with the city of Redmond to renew the contract for dispatch services and we also started negotiations with them on the new mental health services. We have started negotiations regarding our public defender services. And then we've also started negotiations on an ILA with the city of Bothell regarding the storage of our personal watercraft during the off seasons. National Night Out was on August 2nd. This is an event we look forward to every year. The response from the community was wonderful. We were thrilled to have council be able to participate again this year. So thank you for shifting that meeting so you guys could participate. And I would like to thank everyone who made that event a huge success. We've been on the river during the weekends to monitor the swimming area in the no wake zone. On July 30th, we did have a water rescue involving a teenage boy. He was caught up in the current. He began to struggle and started to panic. Our officer was able to recognize this, responded quickly, and pulled him to the shallow water where he was able to get up on the shore. At the committee, the whole last month on July 19th, Councilmember Schaefer brought up concerns regarding panhandling within the city. I did research and our response to those calls in the past 6 months and found it was extremely minimal. We recommend not pursuing an ordinance addressing these panhandling at this time. Our officers have thoroughly enjoyed walking Main Street, working summer stage concerts, patrolling the river, and being present with our community once again. Community outreach is our bread and butter, and we look forward to increasing these types of activities even further. I've attached the police stats for July 2022 and the minutes from our June 28th public safety meeting for your convenience and review. Are there any questions?
Councilmember Schaefer.
No questions. Just to reiterate what a asset the police department is to the city of Duvall, and really in many situations they're the face of Duvall. Our community loves the police. People from outside the community come and see the way our police operate and view some of the unique things we have, like the jet ski patrol. And anyway, I just think we have an absolutely outstanding force here in Duvall. I continue to be very proud of these guys.
Thank you, Councilmember Schaefer. I think Councilmember Schaefer speaks for all of us, Chief DeBach. You hear me all the time talk about how I feel like we have the best police department in the country. So thank you for all that you all do. And it's been great seeing, especially the newer officers down at Summer Stage every week, starting to mingle and get to know the community better. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to council committee reports. First up is finance and administration.
Let's see. So we had a meeting on August 11th and all members were present. We had one item for good of the order and it was related to ARPA funding. Several of the FAC members received a community inquiry about how are we spending our ARPA money? How have we been spending it? And just trying to figure out, in the future, how are we communicating to the public, how we're spending our ARPA money? Director Mason suggested possibly adding a page to our report, our quarterly report, just to keep an update, a running tally of where we've spent money and where we, have already planned to spend that funding. We had a discussion about the information technology services RFP, and I think maybe council has been briefed on that. I'm trying to remember, but basically, it's likely we will need to go out and look for IT services for our city. Currently, we're using City of Snoqualmie, and they have let us know that they are not going to be able to continue with that. And so or likely not be able to continue, I think is the understanding.
It's up in the air. They're going through a lot of staff changes at this point.
So it's an uncertain time of whether we will be able to continue that. So we need to look into that. And the advice that was given to our staff was that if we do go out for an RFP, it's helpful to have you know, an analysis of our infrastructure and our needs ahead of time, so that we get appropriate responses to an RFP in the future. So this RFP is only for that portion where we're doing an analysis of our current infrastructure and IT needs. So the cost is about $8,000 to $10,000, which is typically equivalent to 1 month of IT service. That was what information we received regarding that. We reviewed the July sales tax. It was observed that sales tax for construction and retail are leveling off. There was also some discussion about if new construction homes are still selling at the rate they were, or if, you know, the permit demand to pick up permits to start building them, if anything has occurred with that, with the change in the real estate market. And it does sound like at least one of the developers did note that they hadn't had a sale recently. So that's definitely, you know, potentially something to keep an eye on. We also looked at investment purchases for our, you know, just our investment portfolio for our fund balances, and interest rates are rising. So that's good news. It should help us, you know, level off our interest revenue going into the next budget. We also looked at the fourth quarter 2021 finance report. Everyone in council should have received that. If you didn't, let us know or let Director Mason know. And one question that came out of that was just a question about fuel expense reporting. And I think we'll be talking about that at the next council or the next FAC meeting. And that's it.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Finance Committee? Seeing none, we'll move on to land use.
No updates, but we have a meeting tomorrow morning at 9:30.
Thank you. And public safety.
No public safety meeting in the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
Do we have a meeting tomorrow? I thought it was canceled.
It was tomorrow's was canceled. Thank you. Okay.
Director Thomas is shaking her head. Yes.
Thank you. I didn't know.
Oh,
sorry. Okay. Thank you.
You scared me.
I won't be there.
Public Works Committee.
Public Works. We did meet. We talked about the overlay project. I think you saw that in the consent as part of our consent agenda. Good discussion about parks, and we covered that today. Also discussed 3rd Avenue remodel update on the police station that continues to progress. 142nd Place sidewalk continues to progress. We're looking forward to construction soon on that. Final plats for Sunset Court, 65 degrees. Hydrant repainting. I think there was something in the consent agenda on that as well, but you guys have probably seen that around. Much to I don't know, either the dogs, city pleasure or displeasure. I don't know if they like that or not. But and ARPA. We had a little discussion on ARPA, including the sound, Main Street sound system, which I still need to do some discussion with property with business owners about that, and try to understand their desires to have that, not have it, and what their thoughts are as far as actually helping their businesses. And that's it.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the Public Works Committee? Seeing none, we'll move on to ad hoc committees. No reports from the ad hoc. Okay, other council reports, and I know Councilmember Schaefer had something for the good of the order so I will go ahead and call on you first.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is very, very brief and more of a fun item than anything else. But I did have the opportunity to go on a Port of Seattle harbor cruise, an educational cruise. that we went around to the different points in, I guess it's primarily Elliott Bay, where they where the port has their activities, loading, unloading, talked about the ships, the amount of containers coming in these days, and it really boggles the mind what they do there. It was very, very interesting. They did an excellent job of helping to educate us, and you know, I always enjoy being on a boat period, so it was fun as well. That's it.
All right, thank you. Moving on to administration. First up is general updates.
Mayor, I'm assuming that's me.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure before I change the screens. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and members of the audience. I'm going to share my screen really quick. So it'll be pretty quick again for this evening. Just a department and administrative update. OpenGov utility billing will begin here in the next couple of weeks. OpenGov utility module will go live at the next utility billing. That's going to be coming out in the next week or so. The utility statement will have a new look, and there will be a new payment portal. Customers will need their account number and a PIN number, which will go out in the utility bill and the statement to access their new payment portal. We have updated our website. So you can see over here, this is on the front page of our city website. And this is just a screenshot that shows, hey, this is what's up and coming. And then we also will be blasting out to Facebook so that the customers know as well. I can tell you it is going to be bumpy. It's always bumpy when we have change, but Dana is very confident that we'll roll through this. And so if she's confident, I'm confident as well. OpenGov building update. So again, we went live with our building permit module, and we have received since that time 31 new home permits. 27 of them came in yesterday, and we know that we're going to be getting some more. So that's exciting. The ones that came in this week, by the way, were because we did grant final site plan review for the 1 acre park at Toll Brothers. So that's also in our presentation. We did request proposals for a facilitator retreat, and I put $ in there because, wow, it came in way higher than what we thought it was. So what we're going to do is we're going to meet with the consultant to pare down the scope of work, and that'll be next week with the mayor pro tem and myself. Sarah will be on vacation, so I'll hang in for that one. The city administrator recruit, I thought this was like the best news of the day. We are up to 25 applicants. 10 are considered well qualified, and 5 meet the minimum qualifications or have a little bit more than minimum qualifications. So I think that's amazing news. If you haven't responded to the interview invite, please do so as soon as possible. Community development, just a small update, updating recruitment to associate planner this week. We have not yet received any new applications in a couple months. And Steve wanted to provide an update as well. So Steve, you're on.
Good evening, council, mayor, staff, citizens. Steve Laniszewski, Public Works. Just an opportunity to provide a brief update since our chief provides you such comprehensive information. We feel really put on an edge here. So 145th Street sidewalk project manager Ressler wanted me to make sure to at least say, hey, it's coming and it will come fast. We're at 90% going through a permit process as well as finalizing design. So we do have timelines and constraints on that. We are hopeful to get that bid the next 30 days and come to you real quick. Likely not for anything more than just a one touch once we initiate and have a contract that we can support. And of course, expecting it to be within the confines of our budget we've projected. Just more work for the future biosolids. That is a 3-year contract. So with our treatment plant, we haul the biosolids away. They go to a farm, they're land applied. That is a permitted process that expires early in 2023. So that is ready to go. And we'll have that coming forward in the future. That is just normal operations and is part of our budget line in the 402 sewer fund.
it has to get hauled away. On-call contracts, you should see the remaining 3 that we provided for planning and community development use. We got Laura environmental, architectural support, as well as hearings examiner. So those may be on the next meeting or the one shortly thereafter. SCADA, our big SCADA project, it is wrapping up. They are on site Thursday, trying to implement the last bits of control modules. Lots of sensors from the old system that are being integrated and aren't quite alive anymore. So upgrading and updating still under budget and what we had expected. So nothing out of the norm there. I hope to have a share for you sooner than later. Right now it's all flashing red with errors and warnings, but just tweaking the bugs in the system. Interestingly enough, the Tolt 1, which is out off Big Rock by the fire station off Baton Road, that has an intrusion alarm sensor, which seems to go off at 1:45 a.m. when a large truck drives by. So little things like that. Let's see. We do have service contracts we'll be soliciting for soon, like window, janitorial, and whatnot. Stormwater program coordinator and updating. We do have interviews scheduled. We did have 11 applicants, not a huge amount, but 3 did have similar relevant experience. We already lost 1 in the process, as they were probably using us as a tool to promote themselves and did receive some sort of promotion and let us know that they were removing their name for consideration. But so we're doing our first round of interviews at the end of the month. Toll pipeline replacement project has not long been forgotten, but it is really kind of stuck in the doldrums of the county. You may have heard me mention it briefly in the committee of the whole. That permit was applied for in January. So a clear and grade permit at the city of Duvall will run you about 2 days. So we're working on that. We'll have a surplus ordinance in front of you sometime this winter and fall after summer kind of slows down. And then wastewater treatment plant, we do have a hearing at the next council meeting, but we are still on schedule to be at 90% plan due in September. So we're on or ahead of schedule. We had a update meeting with Suez, which is kind of the proprietary operator of the plant in our partnership. We're looking at 60 months for membranes, 40-ish months for other large controllers. So moving forward in advance was wise. So we're sitting pretty right now and trying to make sure we are comprehensively collecting everything we need for the plant update. And I think that's about it. Something else went into my head, but it just flew away. Any questions or comments? And the little image you saw on the side there, if you did read the packet on the hydrant program, Ben and Benny, and along with Mason from last summer, that is an interactive map, GIS based, that is uploaded to anywhere that you have web access. You can click on it interactively. It props up what you see. So we had hoped to get some good bids. And we talked to some neighboring cities who may or may not have even gotten bids on this and didn't. Yeah, we were very successful in obtaining bids from painters. It'll be a little bit, I'm sure, bumpy. There will be people complaining about landscape and whatnot, but we will get into outreach now on, hey, if you'd like, your landscape treated a certain way, get ahead of us. Other than that, it's going to look kind of like this, and we'll have some examples to share with the community. But yeah, technology kind of won on that one. So that is a 2-phase approach. So we did everything 275th and west, and then the next phase, probably spring, will be 275th and east. There you go.
Great. Thank you, Director Laniszewski. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on. Oh, I'm sorry. There you go.
Late, sorry. And again, not a question, and I don't want to sound like a broken record here, but I do have the opportunity to sit on the Public Works Committee, and it amazes me what these guys do with such limited staff. You walk around our city, we don't have a bad neighborhood here. Everything looks great, well tended. So much of that is due to the public works staff. They do an amazing job, and that's really all I can say. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Schaefer. And for the others, I did get to meet Corey, our new council member. So we went on a tour Friday, I think, about an hour and a half. Time flew by. We both wanted to chat more and show him more, but we both ran out of time. So an hour and a half flew by and showing him all the things, you know, in the offices around town and everything else. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Moving on, we do not have any special presentations or public hearings, so we'll move straight to unfinished business. First up is Agenda Bill 22-71, resolution adopting employee recruitment policy and personnel policies HR 2022-001. Director Thomas.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. Let me go ahead and share my screen really quickly. Again, this is just a one sheet on the recruitment policy. So the last time we were at Planning Commission, we reviewed the first draft of the policy, and some comments that we received during that were to update the policy language where it said mayor to mayor or designee. We also had a request from the mayor to take the expiration from 2 years to 5 years. And then I also added to the purpose section, which is in section 1, internal recruitment incentive, because the policy only still just said recruitment. And there's also an internal portion of that as well. And that would be if an employee were to help us recruit somebody and they were successful, they would get a small financial incentive as well. We did get a council member some questions today, and that was, can we receive council notice when the policy has been authorized? And then a question on, how do we make sure that when the policy is available for use, at what point in the process, like how far out can it be utilized once we're in process for recruitment? And so I did provide the mayor with some possible language for that, and I can bring it up on the screen. But right now we have the policy pretty much as drafted in the packet. So Mayor, I am ready to take questions.
Great, thank you. First off, I'm sure there'll be some changes, but would someone like to make a motion on this one before we get into conversation, or do you want to do conversation first?
I'll make a motion.
Right.
I move to approve Agenda Bill 2271, approving the resolution establishing an employee recruitment incentive policy.
Is there a second?
Second, Councilmember Isaacson.
Thank you, Councilmember Isaacson. Now discussion. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Napoli?
So I wanted to fess up that was something that I had noticed, a request to change, and I'll explain it. When I was looking at one of the other cities' policies, I think it was Snoqualmie, it was very clear that they wanted to ensure that any incentive was identified at the front end of the recruitment, and it could not be a one-on-one negotiation at the point of hire. And so when I went back and I was reading through our policy, it didn't really make it clear at what point it was established that a signing bonus was available for the position. And so I thought, maybe I could request that we include the language that was in the Snoqualmie. And so I gave a quick call to our attorney, just saying, heads up, I might make a suggestion. And it looks like a little bit of work got done behind the scenes after I made that call. But the bottom line is, what we want to make sure is if there is an incentive, let's say it's as much as $10,000, that's used to attract applicants. And it's not used as a bargaining chip once an applicant is chosen. And I 100% believe that the intent of staff, administration is that signing bonus would be established at the front end of their recruitment. So even if there had been a failed recruitment and then you identified this is a difficult to fill position, then it would be put back out to the public. Now we're offering a signing bonus. Everyone who wants to apply would know that it was available, because otherwise, if you'd offered it and you don't negotiate it till the end, maybe you would have had more applicants if they knew it was available. So anyway, I think it's the intent. I feel very assured that it's the intent of staff to establish if it's a hard to fill position and make sure that everyone knows that the signing bonus is available during recruitment, but I just didn't think it was clear. So there was some language suggested, and I feel comfortable that if our attorney thinks it's addressing my concern, that it will be sufficient. But I don't know if, I also have one other thing, maybe I'll bring that up. I felt to me that council was pretty supportive of, this is a new policy. We kind of want to see how it goes. Originally it was drafted with a 2-year term. Let's see how it goes after the end of 2 years. It looks like the date was changed, that it would be effective for 5 years. And so I just wanted to say, I am more comfortable with the 2-year date, which was the original proposed date. And I wasn't sure. I heard that council was ready to extend it much further. So I would also suggest that we leave it at the 2 years and see how this policy goes. And then the final thing was just, if this policy is enacted, or specifically for recruitment, that there could be notification to council that, hey, we're offering a recruitment bonus or a signing bonus on this hard to fill position, just to keep council updated as we do with other things. So
thank you. Councilmember Isaacson.
Councilmember Naplin kind of hit it with the subject. I wanted to ask the question, if we could, why was it 2 to 5? What was the reason for it?
So we talked about it a little bit at the last meeting, and this is my recommendation that I'm requesting, because we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the staffing shortage is not going to be gone within the next 2 years. It is a pilot program. I'm asking for 5 years so that we don't have to spend significant staff time coming back to council, which the council will most certainly look different in 2 years than it does today, as it will look different 5 years from today. If there is not an issue with the recruiting, the policy won't be used. So it seems to me that it doesn't really make sense to essentially build in additional process and an additional approval process when we know that this problem is going to be long-term. I think the other thing I would like to address as well is the substantially, a recruitment substantially complete. Prime example where I have trouble with that language. I understand what is trying to be achieved, but what I'm concerned about is that if we don't, there are going to be times where we don't know if we're going to get candidates or not. And if we do get candidates based at an existing salary, and we get to the end of finalizing, of hiring somebody, and we lose them because another organization is saying, we have an incentive, we're going to give you a hiring bonus that's $10,000 over what we can offer, we're going to lose that candidate and have to start the process over. And that costs time and money. So, there will be times, obviously, we know there are some positions right now that are very difficult to recruit, that directors and finance director and I may say, we need to offer this incentive up front. But I'm very concerned about having to start processes completely over and waste time, where it's not just time, it's money, significant money, and continues to take longer to get core city functions done, because none of the positions we have are non-essential. Every position we have at the city is essential, and we don't have backups for anybody right now as it exists. So it's really important to me to make sure that we have options and flexibility so that we can identify this. And of course, council will know about it, because that comes in reports, especially if there's any kind of employment contract or it's in the budget, you're going to see that in actually the check register. So that's my perspective on it, and welcome to hear feedback from others. Councilmember Isaacson, you still have your hand up?
Yes, and it's not an accidental. I just didn't get to follow up your answer to the 2 to 5 years because of the continued conversation. My follow-up is that a typical policy length? Is 2 years normal or 5 years? Is there a normal? I understand your answer, but I'm kind of with Councilmember Naplin. Our original conversation on this was some limitation so we could revisit it. And that wouldn't mean it seems to me like it'd be simple to re-implement the policy again, just approve it as it was. But maybe somewhere in the middle. Then for the rest of my council members, we go understand what you're asking for, Mayor, and what you guys are saying, and kind of where our limitations and understandings are too. Is maybe we go for a 3-year mark. Then would be my recommendation.
So to answer your question, Councilmember Isaacson, these are often permanent policies within cities and within agencies. So having a timeline on it is actually unusual to begin with. But the 2 to 5, it takes staff several hours to do agenda bills and bring it forward to the council. So you're already costing a couple $1,000s just to bring the policy back. So this is another thing that I'm thinking about, that the 2-year versus 5-year. 5-year gives us time to evaluate the policy, see if we still need it in 5 years, but I guarantee we're still going to need it in 2 years because we needed it 2 years ago. So I understand where you're coming from as well. But I just want to share that this is, every time we shorten these things that other jurisdictions have as permanent policies, it's costing money and it's making other work not get done. And also potentially, slowing down our recruitment process if we have to do it again. So, council's welcome to do what you want. I'm all in the interest of efficiency and transparency. But if there's not a need for hiring incentives, there's just not going to be anything offered. So there's very little risk, and also does not preclude, if there's a 5-year period, it does not preclude council from asking that issue to come back in 2 years. If you do it for 5 years, it just means that that's your review point for the city council that's unofficial, but nothing stops the council from actually coming back and saying in 2 years, we want to take a look at it.
Thanks.
Councilmember Hogue.
So I'm more inclined to be in favor of the 2 to 3 years, maybe 3 years. I think 5 is too long. I really think this should be revisited. And to me, and I kind of think an incentive is something that is only really offered in the beginning to bring people to get their foot in the door. It shouldn't be something that's offered at the negotiating table when you've already made the decision that this is the person you want to hire and you offer them an incentive. I think it should be to get more candidates in the door. It should be more broadcast out there that we're offering this, because if we hide it and then just give it to them at the very end, it's not bringing us all the best candidates. I don't think, if that's what they're really going for, is a bonus. I'm not in favor of, I would be more inclined to be in favor of putting a clause in there that is only offered at the beginning. That's it.
Right, Councilmember Mercer or Councilmember Schaefer?
Unmute myself. Yeah, I was a little, I'll sort of approach the second comment first, in terms of the recruiting incentive versus signing bonus. I was a little, there was a reference made to signing bonus in the sort of the cover letter before the actual bill. And so in that sense, I wasn't necessarily opposed to using it to essentially close the deal. I know the reference was to Washington Code, and there was a comparison made that this was a similar thing. I know in my sort of day job, there are instances where there's competing offers across multiple jurisdictions, and that, and if they're both offering or one or the other is not based on timing, the offer goes out 2 weeks apart. The one, didn't include it. City of Duvall goes out first, then a competing position goes out 2 weeks later that does offer it. I mean, you really are left with two things: go back and change the terms of the initial offer, or potentially to close the deal. Some type of signing incentive is required. I would, I guess, say if we were going to limit it specifically to upfront recruiting, I think there is still a potential need for a separate ordinance to essentially cover the signing recruitment piece. So I don't know that we're necessarily saving ourselves by limiting it here, because I still think there's going to be opportunities where that may be required. But that's sort of my sort of 2 cents on that piece. I think it's just we'll need to be clear in terms of when, and maybe add some additional language in terms of when that would be used as well. So which is I think also addresses some of Jennifer's concerns, is with the absence of either language limiting it to one specific use or additional language clarifying when a signing bonus would be offered. I think you could address it either of those 2 ways. But I'm not against the concept of a signing bonus to essentially close an offer. I articulated in the bill that we're looking at today, if that was the intent, to include that as well. So I think that's on that one is really my primary. I'm not as the 2 versus 5 years, as I said, there's an opportunity for council to revisit. So on that one, I don't have specific concerns. I know it is a change in the time frame. There's nothing to preclude, just in the same way there's nothing when we hire an employee to go back and sort of, reduce headcount. There's nothing to preclude the council from asking for a review within that 5 period and or terminating the policy early. So again, I'm not specifically concerned with the 5-year versus 2-year.
Thank you, Councilmember Mercer. Councilmember Schaefer.
But first of all, I agree with what Ron just said about industry practice using a potential bonus to close a deal. Recruiting could be a long, painful process, as I think a lot of us know, especially when you're recruiting for a very specialized position or a position that's highly competitive. So I am not against using some kind of a bonus to close a deal for a well-qualified candidate. That being said, even if we do that, it should still be subject to in fact, has to be subject to our difficult to recruit criteria. Yep. I was just reviewing that right now. So because it might be used to close the deal at the last part of the recruitment process, it still has to qualify under our difficult recruitment criteria. So I'm okay with that practice.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Naplan?
Yeah, I just, Councilmember Isaacson asked, what is typical? And I just wanted to share that the Snoqualmie policy that was enacted just in March, it expires at the end of the year. So their policy for the hiring incentive and bonus policy is only a 9-month policy. And, this is a substantial change. This isn't private industry where, you have profits and, this is government. And I do believe there is a level of oversight that the council should have. And this is trying a new policy and it's a big change. And just for me, I still don't feel comfortable this being used on an individual negotiating basis. I think it already is used, potentially at director level, but certainly, I don't feel comfortable with that. It's difficult to recruit, put it out there, maybe you'll get more applicants, different applicants. So I still feel that way. So I don't know if do I make a motion and see if there's support and where we stand, or
you could, but I think we should at least let
now. Sorry, I didn't notice that.
Yeah. So Mr. Kenny?
I'm happy to defer to Director Thomas first if she would like to go.
Thank you, Mayor and Council again, Laura Thomas. I did work with Dan Kenny, honestly, probably within 30 minutes of the CAL meeting this evening. And we did draft some additional language that might help council be more comfortable. If you'd like me to share that, if that's where council is going to go in the end, then I'd like to be able to do that. I'm not trying to push council towards making a decision tonight, but we did have this policy at the last council meeting, and we are, either in recruitment or going to be in a new recruitment and are going to reissue recruitment. What we would be doing as a staff is, first, we would fill out a form and talk to the mayor about the recruitment potential of this position and what obstacles we might face. We'd have to make and articulate our argument, or whatever you want to call it, with the mayor. And then we would decide, does this qualify? And the mayor would make the decision and or designee that yes, it does or does not. And then when we go out to push the recruitment out, it'll actually say in the recruitment that an incentive is being offered. So we would do that at the front end of the recruitment. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that we're not going to necessarily start something like this in the middle of a recruitment. It would be part of the front end of a recruitment, and we would go through the mayor or designee with essentially a form. So that's all I wanted to say. And Daniel, if you wanted to add anything else to that, I would appreciate it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So to build on that, in looking at the criteria for difficult to recruit in 3.1.1 through 3.1.4, those criteria, I'm just reading what's drafted. I'll leave the discussion to you all, but as drafted, the first two are, I don't want to challenged recruitments that have happened twice, one through standard advertising, one through specialty advertising, both of those having 2 recruitments failing to generate a minimum of 5 qualified applicants. So in those scenarios, you started without this bonus involved, tried, identified that it wasn't going to happen, and then got it in place to then start another round. And so these are well into the process, but also well short of the end of hiring. 3 and 4 are when you can identify a documented shortage of applicants or a limited pool of applicants. One, because of the job market, that was the example that Director Thomas identified. When we can go to AWC and see 100 postings for an associate planner, we know that that is going to be a challenging recruitment, and we can do that at the very front end, as she just described. Or if there's specific requirements, if you have a highly technical position and you know that that limits the pool itself, then you could, under 3.1.4, start at the very beginning of the process. In my reading of this policy, those criteria wouldn't have the opportunity to be used as a closing tool to close a particular applicant. If you all want to add that, that's by all means for you to discuss. But I would see, when you're looking at 3.1.1 through 3.1.4, there isn't we found an applicant, we didn't have a problem with the application pool or getting to a finalist, but we want to make sure we hang on to them. I certainly appreciate that that could be the scenario. I have clients that are looking for all of the same people that you are right now. It's a very, very, very tough market out there. So this is going to be a fantastic tool. So if that is desired, I think we would probably want to add that in with some language, but I don't see that in there right now. And so I just wanted to identify that from my reading.
Thank you. Councilmember Isaacson?
Yeah, and Kenny, thanks for pointing out that. I was going to highlight that. I thought from when I read that section that it's very clear when staff it's very clear when they would use it as an incentive in the upfront, or like you said, after initial offering. What I would try to recommend in this discussion is that we move forward with the bill as it is, and then if we have time, add the signing a bonus, either the final approval, or let's come back and amend it and add it to it, because I think we're going to be short-sighted if we don't give the staff the ability to do that and we miss an applicant in this competitive environment. But not both. I don't think we should say you can get the $10,000 incentive and then a $10,000 signing bonus. It's like, if the incentive was out there, it's out there. And once you start trying to hire someone and you can't close the deal, or you see that market get competitive in the process of hiring, it gives the staff that ability to go in and say, hey, we're going to offer a bonus that we originally would have identified with the package going out as an incentive if we realized it. It just gives them the flexibility to react to dynamic times. If we tie it to the front only, we're going to be depending on them to identify it. And I would rather give them the flexibility personally.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Isaacson.
Mayor, I did want to just note that we have $10,000 that's not necessarily just as a signing bonus. It is used for other items as well. So if you look at 3.3 new employees, it is it's a financial incentive at the mayor's discretion, and may offer a financial incentive up to $10,000 or up to 2 months of the mayor's employee starting salary, whichever is lower. And so somebody could also request maybe additional, maybe a sick bank leave of say 20 hours at the beginning of employment, or maybe instead of the typical accrual of vacation, maybe they want a bank of 2 weeks of vacation. So there's some different ways that this can be looked at. I just want to make sure that we know there's more to the policy than just, I wouldn't necessarily call it a signing bonus, is I guess what I'm saying.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Naplin?
That just kind of intrigued me, and maybe Mr. Kenny, you can explain. It sounds like this 3.3 is something that could be offered at the time of a job offer that wouldn't necessarily be the signing bonus, but it would be something like, I'm going to give you $10,000 worth of vacation leave into your account. And that wouldn't be something that had been identified ahead of the recruitment and listed. So it almost sounds like they do have this in here, that something could be offered that wasn't identified at the front end of the recruitment. Could you help with that? Because I feel like it's being described by Director Thomas that this is something that could be used at any point of the recruitment in an individual basis.
Well, I mean, I certainly won't speak for Director Thomas, so she can further explain. I guess the way I heard that was that the financial incentive can be proposed in a variety of ways, but she very clearly also said that it would be included in the advertisement. And so I don't know how that would be written in the advertisement, but a financial incentive up to $10,000 or whatever the based on 3.3 that would equal, and maybe it could be granted in a different way. I don't read 3.3 to me as part of the policy, which is the difficult to recruit, recruiting policy, not a separate component. But Director Thomas, please do correct me. I mean, it was your statement.
Yeah.
So I don't.
Yeah, no, you're correct. But when we hire, also sometimes the mayor can come forward with a contract too, right? That would allow additional vacation, like a vacation bank or a sick leave bank. But we're looking at a $10,000 amount for whatever that entirety is.
Great. Does that clear that up for everyone?
Yeah, just to clarify that last point and not sort of dig sort of too deep a hole, just to confirm how I'm reading that based on Daniel's comments, and then what Laura just stated is, from an advertising perspective, it would be surfaced as 10,000 or whatever up to the $10,000 amount. At time of execution, when the contract is agreed to, it could be substituted for some intangible in terms of the equivalency. Because I to your point, I think it was raised, that it's a little complicated how you wouldn't necessarily advertise additional vacation time. But if the employee was more interested in vacation time or sick leave the financial equivalent that would fit to that $10,000, that's essentially what they would receive. But from an advertising perspective, it would likely be promoted or advertised as a dollar amount, just for simplicity. And I think that makes sense to me, again, because that would be the difficult to recruit employees. It would be surfaced at the beginning of the recruitment process, but how it was executed downstream when the actual the employee committed or entered into contract with the city, they could negotiate the form that financial equivalent took. Is that a correct interpretation there, or on track? Or?
I believe that's one way it could be implemented. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, because council member, I almost called you commissioner. Sorry, I'm still used to that. So council member Mercer, because I think a lot of people, maybe the money's not as important as like a bank of vacation or sick leave, right? It just depends. And so you want that flexibility. What is that $10,000? It doesn't mean, and this is what would be within the administrative framework, right? So the mayor designee would be able to authorize Steve and I to go to town and start to work and negotiate this and then come back to the mayor. It doesn't preclude, though, like the mayor or a director saying, you know what, this one's really hard. They have asked for $10,000 cash, and then we'd like 2 weeks of prepaid sick leave. If you to do that, we'd have to come back to council because that would exceed the $10,000.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hogue.
So it feels like we're muddying the waters because we already offer incentives to people that are coming in, and we've negotiated car allowances, we've negotiated vacation, we've negotiated, so it just feels like this paragraph 3.3 just muddies the waters. I thought this was an incentive that we offer up front, that we advertise to try and get more applicants. I never really thought it would be, because we already can negotiate at the contract level. I don't know.
So to the council member's question, point of clarification is that we only negotiate employment contracts with management exempt employees and primarily our directors. So this policy applies to everyone who's represented by a union and has to be approved by the union as well. So you're very limited. We're very limited, and currently under current policy and current contract, what we can offer union represented employees. So yes, if you do an employment contract, you can do that, but you're not doing employment contracts for union employees, only directors. So I hope that helps clear that up. Great. We do have a motion on the floor. So if there's going to be amendments, now would be the time to make it, unless folks have other comments or discussion. Councilmember Naplin.
I make a motion to modify the expiration date to December 31st, 2024, which was the original proposed date.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no.
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 Motion fails. Any further amendments? Councilmember Naplin?
Well, first, it sounded like 3 years was a possibility for some of the other council members. I don't know if I should request that or if everyone is set on the 5 years. I'll do it just for the heck of it. I move that we modify the expiration date to December 31st, 2025.
Second. Great. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no.
No.
Motion fails.
Okay, I will make one more motion, and it has to do with notifying council when this policy is implemented, because it sounds like my other change isn't necessary, because as it stands right now, this can only be used in advance of the recruitment and not individually negotiated at the end of the recruitment. So I will only make the motion that applies to notifying council when this policy is implemented. And that would be to section 3.1.5. I move that we add the following sentence. The mayor will provide notice to council that the incentive policy has been authorized.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Okay, I would like to make one comment. This is a fine amendment, but I also feel that it's redundant because when we do hire new positions, our staff comes and talks to council when we put those out. And we've advised council of the recruiting process for the overwhelming majority of the positions that we have at the city. So we can do that, but I think it's an unnecessary step, but that's for council to decide. So I just wanted to share that feedback. Councilmember Isaacson.
So then that would be part of the notification to the council, is that what you're saying, Mayor?
Our department directors on almost every position already come to council and tell them when we're recruiting. So if we have for example, Director Thomas just gave us an update on her recruiting, as did Director Laniszewski. In these open positions, it is pretty standard practice that the directors do come to council already and give council an update on those vacant positions. And in fact, the police chief does nearly every single meeting. So if there is an extraordinary recruitment issue, that's going to be something that directors would be disclosing as they shared information about the position opening and the recruiting process.
So we're confident the procedures right now would tell us in that notification that we're hiring someone, that incentive will be used.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
So when a new position is being hired and brought to council, say we're going to hire someone else, and part of this hiring process, we're going to use the incentive. Is that what you're saying would be presented to council? Absolutely,
because we talk about salary bands and what is expected as it is. I cannot recall an instance where we've been recruiting for positions and those items haven't been discussed with this body.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Schaefer.
We'll see. So I'm going to vote no on Councilmember Naplin's amendment, but I want to explain why. In general, so first of all, one reason is what the mayor just explained. Well, we'll almost certainly know about it anyway. But the other reason is I'm always concerned with this council that we're getting too deep into the staffing issues, and certainly we have provided an oversight to that. But on the other hand, there's a fine line between an oversight and maybe getting just a little bit too much involved in stuff. And each of us have our own idea of what that is. But my idea is I think this might be just a little bit too much, and that's why I'm going to vote.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment as stated, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no.
No.
Motion fails. With that, all those in favor of the motion as originally moved, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no.
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 The motion fails because we do not have 4 votes. Is that correct, Mr. Kenny?
So I'm just looking at the agenda, Bill. This is just a policy. So this is a majority. It doesn't have to be a majority of the whole.
Okay, great. Well, in that case, the motion does pass. Thank you all. Moving on to Agenda Bill 22-78, ordinance adopting revised salary schedule for non-represented employees. And Mr. Kenny, this does require 4 yeses, correct?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I was getting both of them a little confused. And so with only 5 members here, I do have a sense of it where at least one of the other members are on this issue. Before we take a motion, I would like to ask if there's anybody that intends to vote no tonight on this. And if so, and if it's more than one person, then this will come back at the next meeting when we have a full council.
No.
No.
All right, so we do not have 4 votes for this evening. So we'll move it to the next council meeting when everyone's present. All right, moving on to new business, Agenda Bill 22-79, interlocal agreement for King County Cities climate collaboration. So this is for discussion and hopefully decision. It was, I think, about 6 weeks ago that Matt Koharic from King County came to present us about the King County Climate Cities collaboration. It's been a very successful group over the last, I think, 5 to 7 years. Really signing on to this interlocal is a very small cost. It's $700 per year, but we get access to King County staff. We have more access to what's going on in the climate world, which I know is very important to many folks sitting on this council. And it also provides opportunities for staff when they have the opportunity to, and are interested to participate in staff groups and learn from others, other cities, and potentially bring items forward or get help with items that are coming forward for our policy. So I had asked a few times for council if there were any objections to this to please let me know. I did not receive any formal objections, which is why it's up for approval. So if folks are ready to make a motion, I'd be happy to entertain one. Councilmember Schaefer.
Let's see, I am going to make a motion, but I'm going to talk a little bit first. And that, you know, things like this have to be more than just a feel-good thing. And I'm always concerned about, you know, okay, well, let's contribute to this cause because it's a feel-good thing. And there's a little bit of that here, but I'm still in favor of this, and here's why. There's potential for good, you know, good information from this by, you know, for essentially very little cost on our part. I see difficult decisions in front of us. For instance, there are municipalities that require heat pumps in all construction. Is Duvall going to be one of those? It would be by my way, but that's going to be a council decision, and that requires us to have good information to make those types of decisions. So I'm assuming that we're going to be benefit from this for that, you know, for that type of information. So I will support it, and I move to approve Agenda Bill 2279, approving an interlocal for participation in the King County Cities Climate Collaboration.
Is there a second? Oh, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Are there any abstentions? Councilmember Isaacson, I didn't hear you. You've been on mute, and I did not hear a verbal from Councilmember Naplin.
I apologize. I tried to unmute and say abstention.
I'm sorry, you're abstaining?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Naplin?
I guess I'll abstain. I don't know that has necessarily a legal value, but yeah.
All right.
I'll abstain.
So that means it's 3 yeses, 2 abstentions. The motion passes. So we are now a member of the King County Climate Collaborative Cities Collaboration. Thank you. This will be a good comment of feel good. The county is actually making significant progress on climate change policy, and the cities that are members are help leading the effort in their jurisdictions as well, because most of the population in King County lives in cities. So these efforts aren't successful without those partnerships. So thank you. Next up is Agenda Bill 22-80, adopting revised term of office for Mayor Pro Tem for discussion and/or decision. Ms. McMillan, our city clerk.
So this just resolves a conflict between the municipal code and the current rules of procedure. In the rules of procedure, it says the term of office for the mayor pro tem is 2 years, and in the code, it says it's 1 year. And so I have no opinion, as to whether it should be 2 or 1 or a recommendation in that way. It's totally up to the council. If, I think it's more consistent if you have a person for 2 years and it matches up with the turnover of the council, with the elections being in the odd numbered years. Yeah. So it matches up with new people coming in and they want to elect a new person. And then the advantage of having it just 1 year is maybe you just want to review it more often. So I don't have an opinion to share. So it's up to you.
Great, thank you. Director Thomas has our hand up, but I will point out that she says the video is out. I actually just got a text that.
So we can't see council. All we can see is Sarah's name. So the video, there we go. The video is back on. Thank you.
Great. All right, I will just say that previously, before I think 2018, Mayor Pro Tem was a year-long tenure, and there wasn't a lot of consistency. And I will say that especially with former Councilmember Remington and current Mayor Pro Tem McHenry, having a 2-year term is invaluable in making sure that there's stability and consistency for that 2-year period. And I think that the Mayor Pro Tem also gets to get their feet under them and achieve a lot more for the council with that 2-year term. So I highly support this. It's not my decision, but I thought I would share my thought on that one as well.
I think I did hear the Mayor Pro Tem say she felt that, it takes about a year to really learn the ropes.
Yeah.
So that's very fun.
Absolutely. Councilmember Isaacson.
Yeah, I just want to say, can you hear me? Because it's really breaking up.
You're breaking up, Councilmember. Do you want to try
Same
again?
here.
Maybe he was saying we were all breaking up too.
Could be.
How about
Councilmember.
now?
Oh,
Can you hear us?
You were better for a moment and then you went away.
Councilmember Mercer, let's go to you first and we'll try Councilmember Isaacson again.
Yeah, I was sort of going to just echo. I think, there's some value in continuity beyond that. I've seen Mayor Pro Tem, the benefit of being able to do more travel, build more relationships in terms of networking, to basically become more effective. I know that's, we've also talked about that just in a lot of roles, but I think for me, just the amount of additional work that is being taken on, there's some value in having that continuity and the time. I think, as Sarah mentioned, to essentially get your feet under you, build some confidence and become more effective. So I don't have any problems with the proposed change.
Thank you, Councilmember Mercer. Councilmember Naplin?
Yeah, I think if someone's willing to do it for 2 years, then that's great. I don't think anyone has any opposition to that. At least I don't. I think that our Mayor Pro Tems have done an amazing job. The only thing I can think of is what if someone was like, I can't really commit to 2 years. I'll give it a try for a year. That the 2-year commitment might exclude some people from being willing to do it. That's my only concern. So, but if someone's willing to do it for 2 years, that's great.
And for clarification too, if someone's elected Mayor Pro Tem and they need to resign for any reason, that's acceptable.
Yeah.
So you're not locked into that position forever. It's just trying to get that 2-year commitment. Yeah. Councilmember Hope.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Agenda Bill 22-80, adopting an ordinance changing the term of office of the Mayor Pro Tem from 1 year to 2 years and repeal Ordinance 746.
Second.
Right. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And with that, we have no further business, so we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Really?